Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
It was around 6:30 on a Tuesday night, and I was folding laundry on the couch while the dishwasher hummed its way through another cycle I'd loaded and started without being asked. The TV was on low volume, playing one of those home renovation shows where a couple miraculously flips a moldy shack into a dream house in 30 minutes. Mike was in the shower upstairs, probably singing to himself in that off-key baritone I used to find charming before I learned what it meant to carry someone, for decades, who never planned on returning the favor. A buzzing came from his phone, face down on the coffee table. Normally I wouldn't touch it, but the name flashing on the screen made me freeze mid-fold. Emily, his daughter. I hadn't heard from her directly in weeks, not since her last passive-aggressive text asking if I'd contribute to their baby moon. She's 7 months pregnant with her second kid, and every milestone seems to require a GoFundMe-style cash infusion. I didn't pick up the call, but the voicemail popped up almost immediately. I didn't plan on listening to it, I really didn't. But when I saw the transcript start with, "Hey, Dad, just checking if the ski rental is all set," my heart did this strange thing where it didn't drop but tightened. Like it was preparing itself for something ugly. I pressed play. "Hey, Dad, just checking if the ski rental is all set. Brad said you booked the lodge already, thank you. Tell Lisa I said hi. Or, well, never mind. We'll just see you guys tomorrow morning. Early flight. Love you." I stood there holding Mike's gray t-shirt like it was the last piece of evidence in a murder trial. I played it again. And again. Ski rental? Lodge? Tomorrow morning? I hadn't packed a damn thing. I hadn't even been invited. When Mike came downstairs in his towel, whistling like nothing had changed, I looked up from the laundry pile and said, very calmly, "You forgot to mention a trip." He stopped, eyes shifting like a cornered teenager. "What?" I heard Emily's message. His shoulders dropped an inch, like he'd been carrying a lie and was suddenly tired of holding it. "I was gonna tell you." "When?" "Tonight. After dinner." "And you leave tomorrow?" "Yeah." He rubbed his neck like it would help him lie better. "It's just a few days." It was kind of spur of the moment. "Who's going?" He looked around like someone might rescue him from the truth. "Me, Emily, Brad." "Sophie," I blinked hard like the air had shifted. "Sophie's going?" She just wanted to spend some time with her step-siblings. They thought a trip like this might help everyone reset. You know, after the tension lately. I sat back, stunned into a slow kind of rage. Not the yelling kind. The internal earthquake kind. You all planned a 5-star ski trip to Aspen and excluded me because you thought it would ease the tension? It's not like that. Then what is it like? He shrugged. It's just, they said you make things awkward. That sometimes you act like the fun police. And when money comes up, well, I make things about money. He nodded, relieved I'd said it so he didn't have to. I laughed once. Loud and sharp. "Mike, I am the money." "I didn't mean it like that." "No, you meant it exactly like that. You meant, take the woman's income, but not the woman." "Got it." He started saying something else, but I didn't hear him. My ears were full of blood and static. It was funny, really. For years I thought I was part of this family. I thought I'd earned my way in by being useful, generous, by showing up when their real mother didn't, by paying for things she couldn't or wouldn't. And now here I was cut out for the sake of avoiding awkwardness. Not even worthy of an invite to my own betrayal. I folded the shirt I was holding. Perfect creases. Mechanical precision. And then I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give out of kindness. No, this one felt slow and calculated. The kind of smile you flash before you start the stopwatch on your revenge. They were flying out at 6 in the morning. Which meant I had one night to decide who I really was. The woman they could ignore, or the one they'd never forget. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a moment, though I lay in bed beside the man who had just casually told me that my presence in our family vacation would be too awkward to manage. He snored lightly, probably dreaming about hot tubs and mountain lodges, and those overpriced hot toddies they always drink in ski movies. While I stared at the ceiling fan and counted every single sacrifice I had ever made for the sake of this so-called blended family. At 7 in the morning, I made coffee and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the sun barely cutting through the frost on the windows. The silence was surgical, the kind that sharpens your senses and makes your thoughts sound louder than they should. I logged into our shared bank account, expecting maybe to see a recent charge from a resort or airline, something to confirm the insult with receipts. What I found instead was far worse than even I had anticipated. The lodge booking for their trip to Aspen, the one I had not been invited on, had been paid for 2 weeks earlier using my personal credit card, the one Mike sometimes borrowed when his own was maxed out and his pride wouldn't let him say so. The reservation showed a 5-night stay at a resort I recognized from a travel and leisure article, the kind of place with fireplaces in the bathrooms and warm cookies at check-in. Total? Just over $10,000 for the condo alone. And then the flights. I clicked into our frequent flyer account, the one stacked full of miles earned from my business trips, my conferences, my years of flying coach, while others flew Comfort Plus. The entire family, Mike, Emily, Brad, and even Sophie, had flown using miles I earned, miles that were supposed to be saved for our anniversary trip to Greece, the one we kept pushing off because life got in the way. Turns out, life didn't get in the way. I did. They had used my money, my miles, and my absence as a vacation theme. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft dressed up as a family getaway. That's when I said it out loud, just to hear how ridiculous it sounded. They spent nearly $12,000 and yet didn't invite me. $12,000. That's like, what, $400 a night? I scoffed, not even realizing I'd botched the math until later. I laughed again, louder this time, not from humor but from the sheer absurdity of how easily people take what they never had to earn. I sat for a long time, looking at the charges, watching the numbers blink back at me like some cruel punchline. My heart didn't hurt anymore. It calcified. It turned into something heavy and solid, like a stone pressing down on all the memories I had tried so hard to cherish. Emily's wedding that I paid for entirely, even the damn centerpieces she swore were simple. Brad's used truck I co-signed for because he just needed a boost. Sophie's tuition I covered after her dad bailed out again. And all the birthdays, holidays, vacations before this one, every moment of family building I funded like a lonely investor hoping for emotional returns. Funny how I was always not their real mom, except when it came time to pick up the check. Then I was mom enough, worthy enough, useful enough, just not lovable enough to ski beside them. I closed the laptop slowly, deliberately, as if shutting it would also close the chapter of my life where I played the generous fool. I stood and walked down the hallway toward the basement, past the photos on the wall, pictures of smiling faces, ski jackets, graduation caps, baby showers, all the staged proof that we were a happy family. I paused at one photo, a Christmas from 3 years ago, where Emily and Brad flanked me on either side like I actually belonged. I wanted to rip it off the wall, but I didn't. I left it there, a fossil of the lie I used to live. In the basement, I opened the storage closet and reached for the lockbox hidden behind a crate of holiday decorations we hadn't used since the pandemic. The key was taped to the back of an old snow globe from Chicago, and it clicked open with the sound of something shifting forever. Inside were documents, car titles, insurance papers, bank forms. Keys to the beach condo in Florida. Receipts with my name on them and nobody else's. Power of attorney forms from when Mike had surgery 2 years ago, remember that? I do. I was the one who filled out the paperwork while Emily cried in the waiting room and Brad never showed up. I held everything together while they played helpless children. And in that box was also something else, something Mike had forgotten I ever had. I picked it up, turned it in my hand, and smiled for the second time in 24 hours. Not the kind of smile that forgives. No, it was the kind of smile that comes when you realize the storm isn't coming. It's already here, and you're the one who brought it. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with everything in that box. But I knew this much. It would be silent, it would be clean, and it would be unforgettable. Because if they wanted a vacation from me, they were about to find out what that really meant. By the time their plane touched down in Aspen, I had already called the gas company. Then the electric. The water was next. Each customer service rep was polite, a little too chipper, but I didn't let their scripts distract me from the job. I gave my name, the account number, and told them to shut it all off by Sunday. The woman on the other end of the water account tried to ask if everything was okay, if I was transitioning residences or experiencing hardship. I paused only a second before saying no, I'm just done paying for people who treat me like a stranger. I didn't slam the phone. That would have been too dramatic, too noisy for the kind of revenge I was working with. This wasn't going to be a messy fight in the driveway or a screaming match over text. No, this would be clean. Sharp. Surgical. The kind of thing they'd understand slowly, like a temperature drop you don't notice until your teeth start chattering. After that, I logged into my bank, the one we technically shared, but only because Mike had insisted we streamline our life. He used that word a lot. Streamline. Usually when I asked him to put his name on something or pick up the check for once. I moved my direct deposit to a new account I'd opened the night before. I closed our joint savings entirely. My paycheck had filled 90% of it anyway. I paused only briefly before freezing our main joint account. Not closing, just freezing. I wanted him to feel the frustration. To swipe his card at some overpriced après-ski bar and get that little, declined, beep in front of someone. Maybe his daughter. Maybe a server he'd tipped too generously with someone else's money. I stared at the balance before I hit confirm, just over $82,000. My money. Or at least, mine by contribution, mine by burden. That number stared back at me like an accusation. Or maybe a witness. And then I began the part that felt less like strategy and more like erasure. I walked room by room with a yellow legal pad and started listing what I had bought with my own money. Not our money. Mine. The white leather couch in the living room. The dining table Mike claimed was too long when we first got it, but now loved when we hosted his old college friends. The Sonos system. The oversized TV he bragged about to Brad like he'd picked it out himself. The espresso machine Emily always used when she swung by but never cleaned. I'd bought all of it, every last thing. There were receipts. Literal receipts. I had saved them in a file cabinet under Home, along with warranties and serial numbers. I'd forgotten how many there were, how many thousands of dollars I had poured into this house, trying to make it feel like something more than just a stage set for a sitcom where I played mom with purse. I grabbed a pack of neon pink sticky notes from my desk drawer and started labeling items. The color was loud. It clashed with the muted beige of our suburban walls. Mine. Not yours. Purchased by Lisa. Over and over again, sticking them like warnings across the furniture, the walls, even inside the pantry on the fancy blender Mike used once for protein shakes and then forgot. I wasn't sure who I was labeling them for, him, the kids, or myself, but the act felt holy, like reclaiming lost language. Then I turned to the Tesla in the garage. I remembered the day we got it, how Mike insisted on driving it off the lot even though I was the one who'd put down the down payment. He'd smiled like a boy on Christmas morning, and I'd let it slide because love makes you stupid in quiet, reasonable ways. I opened the glove compartment, found the title copy, and smiled for the first time all day. My name. Only mine. Not even a joint lien. He must have forgotten that part or assumed he'd earned co-ownership just by proximity. I started the engine just to hear the soft purr, then shut it off. I'd come back for it. Later, when the silence would be even louder. I loaded my suitcase slowly, methodically. Just clothes and essentials for now. Enough to make it clear I wasn't storming off in a rage, but stepping away with purpose. There's a difference. Rage is reactive. Purpose is permanent. Upstairs, I opened the walk-in closet and began gathering the jewelry Mike had given me over the years. I kept the ones I liked, real gold, good quality. The rest? I dropped into a donation bag. Cheap sentiment, cheaply given. I wasn't dragging his apologies into my next chapter. When I came back downstairs, the house felt like a hotel room after checkout, stripped of warmth, filled only with the ghost of movement. I walked into the kitchen, the heart of any house, and looked at the cold marble island where I'd prepped meals, hosted holidays, watched my version of family unravel year by year. I grabbed a pen and a sheet of paper from the junk drawer, wrote 7 words, and left it right in the center where they couldn't miss it. I hope the snow was worth it. Then I walked out, letting the door close behind me without looking back, just the echo of my steps and the knowledge that, this time, silence was not absence, it was a statement. When they finally came back from Aspen, sunburned and smiling in the photos I never saw but imagined all too clearly, they walked through the front door expecting to find what they'd always known, comfort without accountability. A house that smelled like fresh laundry and effort they never had to question, the kind of steady quiet that only exists when someone else is holding everything together behind the scenes. But that day, it was different. They didn't walk into warmth. They walked into absence, and it hit them in the gut like a door swinging closed behind them. The furniture was gone. The couch they fought over during family movie nights had vanished. The television, the surround sound system Mike insisted they needed for football season, had been removed without a trace. Even the Wi-Fi was down, the modem unplugged and taken with me because I paid for it and had no reason to leave behind what I built. Their phones wouldn't sync. The Nest thermostat blinked in confusion. Emily tried asking Alexa to play music, and Alexa didn't respond because she was offline, just like I was. Mike tried calling me within the first 10 minutes. His number lit up on my phone, which I still held, now under a new number tied to a different account in a different city. I let it ring, then blocked it. He called again from Brad's phone. Blocked. Then Emily tried, this time with a long text that read more like a tantrum than a message. How could you do this to Dad? We trusted you. You've completely destroyed everything. I stared at it for a full minute before I pressed block without replying. That night, according to Sophie, they ordered takeout and ate it on the floor in the dining room because the chairs had been mine. She texted me quietly from her room and said, I get it now. You finally stopped being their doormat. I stared at her words, the only kindness I'd received since the whole thing started, and I felt something twist loose in my chest, a knot I didn't even know I'd been carrying for years. Brad, ever the genius, tried to list his truck on a resale site the next morning. He'd barely made it through the listing when the dealer called me to confirm ownership. I told them the truth. The loan was in my name. He hadn't made a single payment in months. They would be collecting it by the end of the week. Sophie said Brad screamed, threw his phone at the wall, and called me a selfish witch. Let him. That truck was a gift from someone they never saw as a real parent until the gifts stopped coming. Emily, I heard, tried to pawn off some of the remaining wedding gifts I'd bought her when she got married. Crystal sets, serving trays, engraved champagne flutes, items she once swore would be passed down for generations. They were listed for half their value, and still no one bought them. Sentiment doesn't sell well when it's attached to a house echoing with betrayal. Mike's job, I knew, was teetering on the edge even before they left. He'd taken leave for family healing, a joke if I'd ever heard one. Now, without my income to patch up the holes, he was scrambling. Mortgage payments weren't automatic anymore. The house was in my name, and he'd forgotten just how many bills I was silently handling: insurance, property tax, even the damn pest control that came every quarter. I'd taken myself out of the equation and watched from a distance as the math started to collapse. Somewhere during that week, I made one last trip back. Not to gloat. Not even to speak. Just to finish the quiet goodbye I'd started. I opened the freezer, the one that had been humming through every season of our fake domestic peace, and slid my wedding ring deep into the back corner, behind a frozen lasagna I knew none of them would eat. It rested there, cold and unbothered, where it belonged, buried, preserved, and completely out of reach. Let them find it in 6 months when they're starving for warmth and wondering why everything tastes like bitterness and frost. I left nothing else behind. No clothes, no notes, no apologies. I did not cry in the driveway or leave teary voicemails about second chances. I simply disappeared, like an underpaid housekeeper who finally figured out the locks worked both ways. I imagined them walking from room to room, checking closets, flipping switches, waiting for the familiarity to return. But it never did, because the heartbeat of that house was gone, and all that remained was the cost of their comfort, paid in full by someone they never thought could walk away. 3 days after they returned, Mike sent me an email. Just a few lines. "You made your point. Come home." It read like a man trying to put a bandage over a severed limb. No apology. No understanding. Just the tired assumption that I would come back because I always did. I replied with exactly 7 words. "I was never at home with you." Then I closed the laptop, silenced the phone, and stepped outside into air that didn't smell like compromise. And for the first time in decades, I breathed like someone who didn't owe anyone anything. The first morning I woke up in the cabin, the light poured through thin white curtains like the sky was trying to apologize for everything I'd left behind, and I let it. I let the light in without reaching for my phone, without checking for missed calls, without scanning the edges of the silence for someone else's need. I just sat up in a bed I'd never shared with anyone, wrapped the wool blanket tighter around my shoulders, and watched a seagull circle above the dunes like it didn't care where I'd come from or what I'd done. The cabin was small but clean, the kind of place you rent when you're not running away exactly, but definitely not running toward anything familiar either. It had a fireplace that worked half the time, mismatched dishes that looked like they belonged in a grandmother's attic, and a porch that faced the ocean in a way that made even regret feel quiet. I didn't cry. That surprised me more than anything. I thought grief would come in waves, that I'd fall apart in the grocery store or break down while folding laundry that wasn't for anyone else. But no tears came. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I spent those first few days making small routines out of nothing. I'd walk along the shore every morning with a thermos of coffee, boots sinking into the wet sand, jacket zipped up to my chin like armor against a world I no longer felt obligated to please. I didn't answer texts, though there weren't many. Sophie reached out, but gently, never pushing. She understood. I think she always understood more than she said. The others? Nothing worth reading. After that last email from Mike, I blocked his address entirely. I didn't need to hear more attempts to recast what happened as a misunderstanding or mutual failure. Mike did try legal threats. Of course he did. He always relied on institutions to scare people when charm failed. But his lawyer's letters arrived late and left earlier than expected, dissolving under the weight of facts. Every document they tried to twist had my name printed in clean black ink on the deed, on the car titles, on the accounts. There was no marital asset argument that could unwrite the years I spent signing checks alone while he played the patriarch with someone else's pen. They had nothing to stand on but bruised pride and empty pockets, and it turns out banks don't take emotional damage as collateral. I didn't celebrate it. That's the part people might not believe. There was no triumphant music, no victory dance in the middle of the living room with a bottle of cheap wine. I didn't laugh when they started falling apart without my invisible scaffolding. I didn't cheer when Brad's truck got repossessed or when Emily posted vague Facebook statuses about fake people and betrayal disguised as love. I didn't feel better. I just felt clearer. Like I'd been underwater so long I forgot what it meant to breathe without choking. And yet, even in that clarity, there were nights I sat by the fireplace and asked myself the hard questions. Did I go too far? Was this revenge, or just survival dressed up in a more expensive coat? Could I have walked away more gracefully, left them intact, preserved their dignity while reclaiming my own? I don't know. That's the part that won't wrap itself in neat conclusions. Maybe I burned it all down when I should have just walked away. But the truth is, I couldn't keep being the unpaid maid with a MasterCard and a forced smile at every family dinner where nobody asked how I was really doing. The silence I gave them wasn't empty. It was full of everything I used to offer without being asked. My time, my money, my forgiveness, my patience. All withdrawn. All gone. Let them live without it and see how loud it gets. It was about 3 weeks into my new life, because that's what I decided to call it, not a break, not a phase, but a life, when the envelope arrived. No return address. Just a smudge of something on the corner, like someone had hesitated before sealing it. Inside, there was only one thing, a photo. A printed, glossy snapshot of me, Mike, and the kids on the porch from years ago. I remembered the day. It was summer, humid, sticky with barbecue smoke and cheap beer, and someone had said, "Smile, pretend we all like each other." And we did. We smiled. The kind of smile that looks real enough to fool strangers. On the back, written in blocky, unmistakable handwriting, were 4 words, "Wish you were here." I stared at that picture for a long time. Not angry. Not nostalgic. Just still. Like I was waiting for the image to say something more than it could. I thought about keeping it. Maybe sliding it into the back of a drawer or using it as a bookmark for a novel I'd never finish. But in the end, I stood up, opened the fireplace door, and let the flames do what they do best, consume without ceremony. I gave them everything. Now I've given them silence. Let's see which one they remember longer.